Welcome to Shut Up and Sit. I'm Yedda Stansel, a consciousness coach and consultant. I'm on a mission to bring mindfulness to the modern world. Each week, we will offer ancient healing practices, real-world examples, and the latest research in neurobiology and behavior change into fun conversation that invites you to wake up your highest self. Now, let's go shut up and sit. Welcome back, everyone, to the Shut Up and Sit podcast. And also maybe I'm going to start calling it a show. I'm feeling like I'm getting in touch with my little kind of inner performer, which has always been there since I was a kid. Those people that know me know ever since I was little, I have loved. Little was Shirley Temple. And then as I grew up a little bit, definitely Audrey Hepburn, Jackie Kennedy, got into adulthood, Angelina Jolie, really cool female archetypes, all performers. But my all-time go-to favorite is Shirley Temple. I absolutely loved her as a little girl. I still love her. And the reason why I say welcome back to the show is I've always been one of these people who loved to be wide-eyed, kind of performer on, very, very much so into expressing recognition. And this is so cool because when we do this work, when we shut up and sit and we go within, so many of us as adults have forgotten who we really are. Or if we're raising children, we're raising or little people or have any type of influence in little people's minds, what we're doing is we're really influencing them to be something other than they probably already are. And so for me, what I love about this show, and Robin hears me say this every time I come down to the studio and I put these headphones on, everything just goes away. There's the coolest sound of silence and this kind of really connection to me inside of me, and the rest of the world just goes bzzz. And here I am. And so I love this. And I said this the other day to somebody, I'm like, I will just show up and shut up and sit and talk into the ethers forever, even if all it does is just feed my own soul to get back in touch with that little girl that's inside of me, which is that kind of wide-eyed wonder. Shirley Temple, one of my mom's stories is when I was little, she would take me out and I would do I'm a little teapot, short and stout, tip me over and pour me out. And I would perform that for anybody, anywhere. And you might think that's really silly, but as a little kid, I've always loved inspiring and performing and really just being with people and helping people to really just have a smile, to bring a light into their life and into their eyes. And so when I do the show, when I welcome you to every episode, that's really the energy that I am. No matter where you are, if you're listening, if you're watching, whatever's going on in your life right now, literally the light inside of me is shining and wanting to wake up and just brighten and help you to remember that the light inside of you is there too. And you can bring him or her out into the world. And that's why we're doing this work. So we're moving into a little bit around still kind of a chapter 4 in the book and moving deeper into understanding beliefs and really kind of drilling in the meat of behavior at this point right now. And in the last episode, I talked to you about brainwaves. Another thing I'm passionate about, how does the brain work? What's the brain like? I was on a call recently listening to a very famous neuroscientist and just listening to the validation of the work in Shut Up and Sit and how the thinking, feeling, behaving process works in the brain and how everybody's brain, even though we all have similarities and we all have the same brain waves, but our brains work wildly, uniquely different based upon our own human experience, human stories. And so belief is so, so important. And as we kind of dig a little bit deeper into the brain, I want you really to just hold space that the uniqueness for who you are, the biology of your beliefs that is in your brain, the science, the wiring, the neurobiology, all this cool stuff that's going on. Yes, it's who you are. And yes, it does have the potential for you to continue to grow and evolve who you are. So you can kind of reach up and out into the ethers and out into the outer world and do things to really expand who you are. You can also shut up and sit and kind of go quietly down within into the essence and the deepest part of who you are to also really expand your knowledge of you. And that's why we do this work. And that's why we're really steeped in beliefs and behaviors. So we're going to go into really, I thought what was really interesting when I started doing this work was I had a lot of questions about, so what does change behavior? And again, you've heard my story at this point by now. Understanding health and fitness was the industry I started in, really only because when I was a kid, I loved to play outside. I loved riding my bike. I loved make-believe, adventure. I had this really cool bike. It was in the 70s, obviously. I had this really cool baby blue Schwinn bike with a big old white banana seat and the big old handlebars and the tassels. I mean, it's just cranking, cruising through the neighborhood. And I felt the most free as a kid when I would ride my bike. Now, I loved that bike. I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. I thought it was the coolest thing in the world, cruising down the street on my really cool Schwinn. And so when we think about human behavior and what lights us up and what drives us and what changes behavior, I went into health and wellness because I thought, well, it'd be cool to be outside, to do fitness, to just be active. That's really why I went into health and fitness. I didn't really realize until years later that, of course, my upbringing, my own human stories you guys are hearing in this book, and all of my wounds really gave me wisdom to be able to work at a deeper level at understanding why people do what they do and why they don't do what they do. So early on in my career, I thought, well, I'm telling you what you're supposed to do. You should just do it, right? And they wouldn't always follow through. And so the layers of work in this book were to help me really kind of understand, why don't people? If we know what we're supposed to do, why don't we do it? It's been a burning question for me for eons. And so in the past few years when I did the work, even for myself, why? I know what I'm supposed to be doing. I know the difference between right and wrong. Why am I still doing shit that I'm not supposed to be doing? That was a really big question of mine. And what I realized, and you guys keep hearing this, but repetition is going to keep coming because that's one of the ways that we change a belief. But what I realized was I needed to go deeper into understanding when I'm here, awake, aware, and available, yes, I can make a different conscious choice. But when I fall back asleep in the trance, I get stressed out, I get overwhelmed, some old narrative kicks in and takes over because I'm in some type of stress response. There's a script running that somebody gave me, somebody gave you. And so the truth is, we all know. We know we're not supposed to smoke. It causes lung cancer. We all know we're supposed to exercise 30 minutes a day. We all know we're supposed to eat more fruits and vegetables. We all know that science says for, alcohol, it should be done in moderation. I could run down the list. We know what we're supposed to do, yet we still will do the exact opposite. And it's really why I started this whole book and this whole process talking about how we're numbing our suffering. And you heard about that in the very beginning in chapter 1. But really, why, if we know what we're supposed to do, and Google is out there in the world, there is nothing you can Google anything. As a matter of fact, anymore when someone asks me something, I Google, I'm like, well, what are people teaching about diversity, equity, inclusion? I'll just Google it. What are people doing just so I know what's out there in the ethers and what's not out there. But I haven't found anything Google hasn't really been able to give me some answer on. So here's what I thought was really cool. I'm going to dig into what really does change human behavior. And so in chapter 4, we go into a little bit more depth on this. There's a great TED Talk. Allison, she's in here. I'm sorry, not Allison. That's the other chapter. Jennifer. Jen Cross is in here, and she's talking about the 3 myths of behavior change. Allison Ledgerwood was back in the link is what you think. But so Jen Cross is in here, and she's in the one TED Talk where she's talking about the 3 myths of behavior change. So I Googled, and that's how I found her. There's been a lot of research on the myths of behavior change. So we're going to delve into those today so you really understand what are the 3 myths of behavior change and what's the number one thing that does change our behavior as human beings. And the value of that is you'll stop beating yourself up. Like I said, I knew things were right. I knew things were wrong. But you know what? I still did them anyway. And then that would go into this loop of self-judgment, self-abuse, attack myself. Well, then I would feel like shit about myself. So then I would go do something to make myself feel better. I might drink wine. I might go shop. I might spend money I didn't want to or need to, all to get away from the very core of me not understanding and knowing why I was doing what I was doing and how I could show up and choose to do something different. So at this point in the show, if you've been listening this long, if you've just joined us, you're here, I'm sure, at some point out of the curiosity. but also you're here and you're still showing up because you're getting something out of this. And the one thing you're going to get out of this today is you're going to get the freedom to understand how important it is to give yourself permission to forgive yourself, because you've probably been using these 3 myths to change a behavior your whole life and they're not working. And there's a reason why. So let's talk about the first myth. The first myth is education will change behavior. Just like I said, we think, well, if I know what I'm supposed to do, I'll do it. Okay, so then why aren't we all healthy, happy, wonderful, loving, kind people? Because we all know, I mean, literally, I could poll anyone walking down the street. I do this with my clients. Clients don't come to me because they say, Yedda, I don't know how to be successful. They might think they don't know how to be successful, but they think the answer is, if you just teach me how to be like successful, like what's the knowledge? What do I need to know to be successful? Then I will get there. And I look at people and I'm like, I could give you all the knowledge in the world. It's not going to work. I tried to go down that route, all the education. I mean, I literally looked the other night and I'm like, oh my God, I have spent a jag of money. I mean, we're talking $250,000 on my own education, undergrad, graduates, certifications, continuing degrees, additional certifications, more certifications. More. I mean, it's ridiculous how much I went into I have to know. You'll never know it all. So here's number 1's myth. Education does not change behavior. Just because you know something doesn't mean it is going to give you the ability to change your behavior and to change it and have a long-lasting change of behavior. Now, if you're listening and you're like, well, that's not true yet. I read something and learned, and because I knew that, I changed something. Well, if you did, it was probably a really small behavior that wasn't a deep core belief inside of you. I'm talking about the deep core beliefs inside of you. If you know you should not drink excessively, and you still go out and do it, then there is a deeper core need inside of you that is not being met, because it is overriding and trumping the knowledge that alcohol will cause cirrhosis of the liver if done in extreme consumption for a certain period of time. So education, and I go back to the exercise. I ask people all the time, hey, how often are you supposed to exercise? People look at me and they're like, that's a silly question. Of course, it's 30 minutes a day, 5 to 7 days a week. Do you do it? No. Why? Well, because I get tired. It's the end of the day, the kids. So we buy in, and the stress response kicks this old pattern. Then we buy into the stress, we buy into the narrative, and then we just go down a slippery slope, and we'll do it tomorrow. And maybe I'll do it tomorrow. So education does not change behavior alone. So if you think you need more information, and even listening to this show that you're going to get all the answers, you will set yourself up for a disappointment. I don't have all the answers. And even though we think Google has all the answers, even Google doesn't have all of the answers, because you can never know everything about everything. Is it important to learn new information, and does that expand our awareness and give us new perspective and new content and new context? Absolutely. But if you think that knowing something is how you're going to change a behavior, at least the deeper needs of the beliefs, the sponsoring kind of beliefs and core needs and wounds that are inside of you, they're not going to do it. You could spend the rest of your life in therapy. Well, I just need to know, why did my mom do that? Or I need to know, why did my ex-husband? Or I need to know why So when you start asking why to the point that you just keep consuming information, you'll be really smart. You'll know a shitload of information. I said I wasn't going to cuss on today's show. I already think I ruined that like twice. Maybe I don't know. But anyway, I'm really working on that. I want to be aware, and I don't want to offend you guys, but I also know sometimes that gets people's attention, and it's a little bit of a pattern interruption. And, sometimes I got to remember I grew up in a back of a garage with a bunch of bikers listening to Leonard Skinner with nasty talk. And sometimes it still comes out, and Robin's giving me the hand sign back there. Anyway, you'll just have to bypass that. So here we are, and it's what I want you to hear. So you cannot change your behavior with education alone. Knowledge is not power. Okay, if you believe knowledge is power, then maybe you'll get some power from it. Knowledge is not going to, in the middle of a stress response, when you are hungry, angry, lonely, tired, which is an acronym I use a lot called HALT. When you get into the HALT, right, I need to stop. It's another way of thinking of a different version of a stop technique. HALT is hungry, angry, lonely, tired, usually triggers some type of stress response in the body. The brain begins to go offline, and it says, it doesn't matter how much you know. Because if you remember from an episode back, I told you guys, when you get into a stress response, your prefrontal cortex goes offline, your IQ drops by 50%. So if the average IQ is 100, which it is in the United States, that means your IQ is dropped to 50. So I don't care how much you know about exercise, nutrition, eating healthy, the benefits of being vegan, what are the risks of this, and it all goes out the window when you're in a stress response. And did you know that 90% of our visits to our primary care health physicians right now are totally and directly related to stress response? Because we drop the IQ in a stress response because our brain has to activate different parts to go on survival mode. So it's not operating at a higher level of thought. It's trying to survive, not thrive. So when the brain goes into that response where it's trying to step in and protect you and take care of you, all that other stuff it's gone. It doesn't need it. It's irrelevant because it hasn't really dropped into the core of your being to change your pattern behavior. So when you think you know a lot, you might, but the minute you get stressed out, you go stupid, and you go stupid really quickly. We all do. Even myself, even knowing this. So do I have a process and a system in place to try to keep my nervous system and my brain engaged? Yes, it's called mindfulness. It's called shutting up and sitting down. Literally every day, I invest in keeping my nervous system and my brain on track, engaged, and out of stress response mode. Because that keeps my knowledge in the forefront, keeps this part of my brain engaged, and it keeps me where I can draw on a lot of knowledge. And people do ask me, they're like, God, you know so much. I've studied a ton. But if I did not do my mindfulness practice of cultivating silence and stillness every damn day, I would immediately get triggered in these old patterns and then go right back to those old responses. And that's the magic of shutting up and sitting. You can learn. You won't keep the knowledge in the forefront if you take the bait and get triggered. And so mindfulness allows us to cultivate staying really, really connected to our source, to ourself, to the silent, still space inside of us, no matter what's going on outside of us. And it's the magic, you guys. I could literally every episode, you're going to hear me talk about it. Today, we're going to talk about a different version of mindfulness that I love called Primordial Sound meditation at the end. Because, every time we chat, I tell you a little story, tell you a little content, tell you another way you can be mindful. So we'll get to that in a second. But you've got to stay engaged to retain what you're learning. Okay, that's it. So number one myth, if you think you could just go learn a lot about a lot and you can fix something, it's not going to last forever. Now, myth number two. This is another one of my favorites, and I'm guilty of all of these, you guys. I'm telling you what I learned. You're welcome to go try to do all three of these myths and see if you can prove me wrong. I would love to hear from you, but I'm going to tell you I've done them all, researched them. Science is showing us what happens when we try to do these, and I highly recommend the TED Talk on the 3 myths of behavior change. So definitely check that out with Jen Cross because she'll go into much more detail. And that's why I have her in the book, and I have other experts along the way. You don't need to hear from me. There are tons of experts out there who can tell you what the science and the data says. So that's the first myth, is that we think education will change our behavior, and it doesn't. Second one, we think it's attitude. Ooh, if I just put posters everywhere that say, you rock, girl, or Robin, you the man, you're awesome. That does not change behavior. Attitude follows behavior. It does not precede it. And we've been bought into in the United States, and I say bought into, we drank the Kool-Aid hard on the belief that we're broken, that we need to be fixed, and that positive psychology is going to take us there. And you've heard me talk about this a little bit in other episodes too. It's not healthy to always be forcing yourself to just focus on the positive, because what you're doing is you're still avoiding that life has some pain, right? Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. We have to learn to shut up and sit and be with the pain and the discomfort so that it doesn't trigger us and it doesn't take us into a lot of different areas to then do things that we wouldn't want to do. So we think it's attitude, and we're like, oh, we're just gonna, I can't tell you the years I did corporate wellness where companies were like, we should put posters in the stairwells, and we should do this, and we should put stickies, and you need motivational quotes everywhere you turn. And that doesn't change behavior. You're right. You'll be surrounded by all kinds of cool statements. But when I now walk in someone's office or even someone's home, I was guilty of this. I remember years ago, a friend of mine, a colleague, walking in my house. And you guys, I was one of those people that I vomited quotes everywhere. every single aspect of my house, my work, was all of these quotes. You belong, you're worthy of love, you're this, you're that. And I remember it was a friend of mine, he was a coach, we worked together at the university, and he came in with his wife and he looked at me, he came back from the bathroom and he goes, so you got a lot of quotes in your house. I mean, I had the decks of cards. I mean, they were everywhere. And I was like, yeah. And he goes, so I guess you haven't really gotten those quotes into your mindset and into your meaning making yet. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he was like, well, typically people who don't believe these things about themselves have to surround themselves with comments and quotes to believe those things about themselves. And I got really quiet and I went, whoa, that was really heavy. And I was in the midst of studying and kind of putting all this together. And I was like, so what are you saying? And he was like, people who believe that they already are something don't need to surround themselves with proof of it. And I thought, oh, that's a drop the mic moment for me. And so that was exactly what he meant was attitude does not change behavior. It is a result of a behavior. And once you already have it, you don't need that shit all around you in every single corner. I've been that person. I still know people like that. If you're one of those people listening, that's okay, because you just didn't know, because we bought into a norm that said, surround yourself with all these positive quotes and positive people and awesome things, and you too. Well, yes, at certain levels that might work, but in your own intimate home, motivational notes don't change who you are on the deepest side inside of you. Can they reinforce? Can they remind? Sure. Repetition, as you guys are going to hear a little bit episodes later, we're going to get into how long it literally takes to do something in the same way, in the same version, to get a new belief system. It could take you years of reading Post-it notes in your house, you guys. So you know what I did when my colleague and his wife left? I went around my entire house. I took a big old box. I took every single quote, every card, I took it all and I put all of it in a box and I gave it away. And the reason I did that was because I realized attitude isn't going to change my behavior. This is an internal job. And I want to be surrounded by things that motivate, inspire, and love me. But if I'm literally telling the whole world that I'm trying to force my behavior with quotes all around me, that didn't make any sense. So when you get into, we think it's attitude will change our behavior. No, it follows the behavior change. And I know that's one that you might get stuck on. I got stuck on that too. And with this same colleague, the same professor, he and I ended up doing some work together in Northern Africa at a university. And when I went over there, and you may have heard this one too, but when I went over there, I asked one of the professors, I was teaching about leadership development, entrepreneurship at the university, and it's English-speaking university. And Morocco has a very, very liberal culture, even though they're Muslim. Very liberal culture. They were occupied by France, very French influenced. And I said, "Hey, so I'd love to go to the bookstore." And he said, "Sure." And he was like, "So what section do you want to go to?" And I said, "I want to go to the self-help section." And he couldn't understand. And so I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "But Yedda, we don't believe we're broken." And it really took me a second. And so that culture, they don't surround themselves with quotes. They don't surround themselves with books. They don't believe they're broken. Do they have other cultural challenges? Yes. But here in the United States, we've created this whole personal development industry, if you will, or this movement that says, oh my gosh, you gotta do all these things. We've bought into the belief that some attitude somewhere is what we need to acquire. When you shut up and sit down and you go within to do this work, your attitude will naturally come up that says, I belong, I'm worthy, I'm loving, I'm kind, and you won't need anything to mirror it. So number 2, attitude does not change behavior. Number 3, this is another one. I was guilty of this one too. We think it's rewards. If we motivate people, if we give them rewards, it will change their behavior. That one doesn't work either. I think about this from the corporate wellness industry that I was in, and I'm sure if you've worked for a company, you know, hey, if you work out every day in the gym for the next 21 days, you'll get a ticket to enter into a raffle, or you'll get a free Visa gift card, and in short term, people are like, yeah, that's awesome, I'll do that. And then after the 21 days, and then they get their little reward or their token or whatever the thing was, it didn't stick. Why is that? Because people think time off, money, some type of reward or acknowledgement is going to get them their behavior change. It doesn't. Because when the reward is gone, the old behavior comes back up because you didn't really reprogram a belief. You just held that beach ball underwater long enough to get the reward. And then the brain's really tricky, you guys. And the brain says, oh, cool, that was awesome. We could do that for 3 weeks. We'll get that card. And then the company comes back and says, hey, let's do it for another 3 weeks. This is what happens. Participation goes way up. And then all of a sudden, it drops off after the reward. Well, let's give people another reward. Majority of people might jump back in again. And then it drops back off. Then they'll come back and they'll say, hey, Yedda, we've lost participation again. You're right, because you didn't change a belief system. So then they'll try a third time. Oh, come on, let's rally the troops. Participation gets even lower. Some people might come back in. They get their reward again, drops back off. Eventually, you're still giving money. You're giving stuff away for free. Participation continues to decline. They don't even want to come back because they're like, oh, it was a $25 gas gift card. I already got 6 of them, Yedda. It's not that big of a deal because the brain loves novelty. And we think as human beings, we know what motivates us. But the truth is we don't know what motivates us. Our ego can tell us what motivates us. But we don't really know what motivates us to true behavioral change because we don't know. We really don't know. So those are the 3 myths. We think I need knowledge, I need attitude adjustment, or I need somebody to reward me, okay? I could give you everything here for free and you still wouldn't do it because it's not about that, okay? Here's what changes human behavior. It's 2 words, social norms. That's it. It's that simple. If you really want to change, and when I say a social norm, what I mean is you are living in a very, and I'm going to give you kind of a model here that I use in narrative coaching and in integrative development in a minute, but you're living in a very integrated, holistic way where everything about your identity is supported in a social norm for the identity that you already either have or the identity that you wish to acquire. So what do I mean? Your identity is made of behavior, environment, aspiration, mindset. I've talked about this a little bit, but it's called I-beam. So if you took a piece of paper and you drew a little circle or if you put a little I in the middle, and then you took 3 big circles, this is a Venn diagram in business, and the 3 big circles were B for behavior, E for environment, M for mindset, and they kind of converge together, and where all 3 overlap is a little circle where we put the little I for identity. And then we draw a little arrow out to the outside of the Venn diagram for aspiration. Why do we draw that out to the outside? And aspiration is not quite, it's an unknown. It's not here yet. So if you aspire to be something that's outside of the current norm you live in, norms are created by behaviors of yourself and others, environment of yourself and others, and mindset of yourself and others. And I'm talking internal and I'm talking external. So when you look at a behavior that you wish or would choose to acquire or have in your life, if you are not in a place where you are supported and you're around people that possess that behavior, that give you the ability to put you in the environment that they're in, and that the mindset isn't there, and you're in that soup, you can change the behavior. If I took you out of Richmond, Virginia, where I am today, and I planted you in Casablanca, Morocco tomorrow, I promise you, if I left you there long enough, immediately you would start to change everything about your behaviors. Because if you tried to show up as an American in a culture whose behavior, environment, and mindset, and even their aspirations are different than the one that you live in, you either adapt or you leave. We are herd animals, right? We're mammals, okay? And as mammals, we like to be in a sense of community, a sense of connection. And when we are not following the herd's rules, guess what happens? They leave us behind, or we wander off and find another herd. That's all a belief system is a social norm. And it's that simple, but it's that complex. And so we don't talk about, if you're somebody who, and I use weight loss a lot because it's a safe topic, it's a common topic, but if you're not into weight loss or never had a weight issue, maybe you've gone into something around health. I think it's safe for us to say most of us can safely say at some point in our life we've tried to modify one of our health behaviors. if you're somebody who says, I'd like to lose 50 pounds, 15 pounds, whatever it is, I'd like to eat better, I'd like to exercise regularly, and you are constantly putting yourself in a social norm with people who have a behavior, an environment, an aspiration, a mindset different from that, guess what you are going to do? You are not going to change the behavior that you want. You're going to follow the social norm in the circles in which you live. And this is why, and you've heard my mom's story probably already in the show, but this is why, something like an Alcoholics Anonymous works, because they don't, when they quit drinking, they don't keep going to the same environment. They don't have the same behaviors or aspirations or mindsets. They work on all of that to get out of the norm of using alcohol as a mechanism to survive. And I love this, and this kind of example reminds me of a story of my mom said, you never hear anybody say, man, my life really took off when I started drinking excessively. And I thought, wow. That boy, isn't that true? And she said, so if it's a problem, you don't keep going back into that same environment, that same circle of friends or the same experiences, because environment is so important. Social norms are so important. So if you want to change a behavior, whatever behavior you're thinking about right now in your life that you want to modify, change, whatever it is, radically change, social norms. Hang out with people who have the behavior that you aspire to acquire. Put yourself in the environment of where those people are. Set the aspiration and talk to people about their aspirations, their dreams, their vision. Where are they headed? Are they in alignment with where you're headed? And then mindset. What's the mindset that they hold? Where are those people? That's the fastest way, because you will step into that. And I remember a client of mine one time saying, well, if that's true, then Yedda, and I'm trying to lose weight, then can I go out to eat with you? I said, sure. Because she said, I don't know, what does it look like when healthy people go out to eat? Because if I come in and train with you, and this was 25 years ago, if I come in and train with you and you're telling me go home and eat healthy, I don't know what that means. And then I leave here and I go meet my girlfriends down at TGI Fridays. We have a couple of drinks. We order chicken fingers and French fries, and then I go home. And I'm thinking I'm eating healthy because I didn't have 6 drinks. I only had 2. I had chicken, I had potatoes. And I said, yeah, that's a really, really great question. So she came to eat dinner with me, and she saw what I ordered, and she said, I would never in my right mind, out of sheer social anxiety, order what I normally order when I see you order a healthy salad with grilled chicken breast on the side and a light dressing on the side. And she said, that was so helpful for me to see what you mean when you say eat healthy. So social norms is the number one way to change a behavior, which leads me into, where does mindfulness come in? If we do not build a cultural shift of shutting up and sitting down and going within and cultivating silence. Silence is unconditioned consciousness. It has no patterned behavior. It has no belief system. When I shut up and I sit, you hear that silence? It doesn't have any conditioning around it. It doesn't have a belief. What I love most right now about my silent time is I'm free of all the dogma. I'm free of all the drama. I'm free of all the bullshit. I'm free of all the chatter. So this morning when I got up, the first thing I did this morning is I have this really cool kind of, talked about my bike, my Schwinn baby blue bike. Well, I don't have a Schwinn anymore, but I do have a Townie. And I got this really cool kind of salmon colored Townie with a white seat. It's got little teal rims inside my tires. And I got in my little Townie and rode my bike around my neighborhood, went down to the local Starbucks, got me a little coffee, and went to the little lake in the neighborhood where I live, parked my bike. I felt like I was 10 years old, you guys. I love it. And sat in silence, just looking at the lake, watching the blue herring fly in, looking at the birds, staring at the sky, and cultivated about 15 to 20 minutes out of my day to just sit and be in the silence of existence. I wasn't on my phone. I wasn't even thinking. I literally, at some point, yes, I was thinking, but I don't mean that incessant, obsessive, compulsive chatter. And I was able to just be in some silence. And some friends later reached out and said, hey, we missed you on the call this morning. And I said, hey, I needed time to sit and listen today. I just wanted to listen. Because that's what creates space. Silence creates space. And when you create space, you can hear. You can hear the birds. You can hear the ideas that are chasing you, or you'll get a little bit of freedom to wake up some of the things you probably learned a long time ago, and they pop back up and you go, oh, I forgot all about that. So silence is a really important part of social norms that I adamantly believe we have to cultivate, not only in the world, but definitely in the United States of America. Because, when people ask me about the title of the book, they're like, wow, you tell people to shut up. I don't tell it to them to abuse them, to punish them. I said, just shut up and sit down. That's a pattern interruption. And that was me this morning going, you know what? I could do 50 things to keep myself busy. I need to go within. I need some silence. I sat there on that rock by the lake after I watched everything for a little bit, drank my coffee, closed my eyes, and I just listened to the symphony of nature and all the silence that was in and around me. And if we don't cultivate silence as a society, as a social norm, then the egoic world and community that we've created is just going to get harder and harder and harder to live in. Because the ego thinks it's there to serve a purpose. You've heard me talk about it, to protect you, to create separation, keep everybody away from me, don't anybody come hurt me. And the truth is, when I sat there on that rock, I just invited my ego to sit with me and watch the blue herring. I talked to her. What's your greatest fear? Oh, I know. Wouldn't that suck if nobody showed up and listened to your podcast, Yedda? But you know what? You'll be all right. You'll be fine. Oh, I know. Yeah, it's going to be, you're selling a book. What if nobody wants to, well, you got this course. Yeah, you know what? What if nobody wants anything you have to offer? In this moment right here in the silence, you have freedom and you have possibility to do something different. And that's what I mean when I'm talking about shutting up and sitting and cultivating a social norm of silence. And one of I said I was going to talk to you about a mindfulness tool before we wrapped up. One of my methods that I love, and it's called Primordial Sound meditation. So it's one of the two different meditation teacher trainings that I did. If you've learned enough about me by now, I have to check everything out from both angles. I'm not somebody that's just going to do one without going to the other side and say, now I got to see it from that perspective. That's a value and a belief system that I hold. It's part of my human story. I don't want to get lost in the dogma of one thing without going, well, what's the other side see about that? What do they think about it? And really, I am a bridge teacher. I do bridge and spend lots of time collaborating, not just my ego and my soul and my clients' egos and souls, but that edge walker in me wants to take people from different perspectives and say, can we all just come hang out right here in the middle? Because below our belief systems, below our dogma, below all of our bullshit, that's where we all have the power to connect. And we connect in silence. That's the secret. So when we get into this space, so Primordial Sound meditation was one of the ones that I did with Deepak Chopra. And a primordial sound is something that is not man-made. So here's what's really cool about primordial sound: the sound of rain, the sound of birds, the sound of the ocean. Any sound in nature is a primordial sound. And you've heard Robin and I talked about this a few episodes back, where we talked about even the rocks cry out. There is sound, there is vibration, there is frequency in all matter. All energy has movement. So when we say, we need silence and stillness, there's never ever a time of stillness inside of you or inside of this planet, ever, not until we take our last breath in this physical form. So I'm not asking you to get into complete and total like rock-like stillness. Nope, not possible. Your cells are moving, the blood's flowing, everything in you is this awesome vortex of creation, of energy. What I'm asking you to do is to find the silence. And Primordial Sound meditation says when you find the silence and you listen to primordial sounds, you begin to drop into a deeper part of awareness inside of you while simultaneously expanding up and out into the different levels of consciousness. There are 7 levels of consciousness. I might make a special bonus talk on this, but there are 7 levels of consciousness. Silence happens to be number 4. And so primordial sound, and it's a very ancient Vedantic teaching that comes from the Upanishads, and it's very in the Hindu kind of Indian belief system. And I'm not talking to you and teaching you about religion today. I'm just telling you that's the history of where it comes from. But primordial sound is really cool because you get your own primordial sound mantra at the exact moment you were born. So when I work with clients, the exact time, date of where they were born, latitude, longitude, based upon astrology and where the moon and the stars and everything were at the exact moment you were born, there was a primordial sound. There was a vibration that the universe was making. And it's a really cool concept, and you can research this more on your own. I love primordial sound mantras because when I'm listening to primordial sounds of nature, and then I introduce a mantra that is a primordial sound, what happens is I don't logically get caught up in what I'm trying to listen to or what's consuming my mind. And mantra literally means either you can think of it as a vehicle for your mind or a focus for your mind. So one of the cool ways that I learned how to shut up and sit was to go within and actually practice primordial sound meditation. And that's what I did this morning. I sat there and I let the sounds of all of none of them were man-made, all of the sounds of nature and of existence and of the universe just be in symphony and harmony with all of the sounds that were in me. Even my silence has a sound. Even your silence has a sound. That's where we cultivate. So this social norm of silence that I want to bring out into the mainstream by saying things like, I do think silence is sexy. I think the sexiest damn thing you can bring into the room is your soul. So I think when we get into this space of silence, we need to start to cultivate a new belief system and norm around silence. And we need to know that it is totally okay to shut up and sit down and go within and take time to figure out who we are, what we want, ultimately, not our ego, what we really want, and how to bring that out into the world. And until we create a social norm where silence is one of our main ways of communicating to our own self and meeting our own needs, and then bring that out to be able to be with others, I don't see how we're going to get into conversations safely that we can talk about belief systems and we can talk about diversity and equity and justice and inclusion in a way that people can all feel heard and come to the middle of the room. And I'm doing a lot of work now with clients. I would have never thought I would have gone into that work where mindfulness is bringing this along with the shut up and sit, the thinking, feeling, behaving tools into companies and saying, I'm not going to take away what you believe, but I'm going to cultivate a new belief system of how can you come into the space of silence and hold your belief and allow somebody else to hold their belief and allow both belief systems to coexist, because we're not connecting on belief systems. We're connecting at a deeper level when we get into silence and when we get into who we are and really the integrity of our humanity. And so primordial sound meditation is my one little thing for you guys to go check out. Another mindfulness technique. There's tons of them out there, but that's one of my favorites. And I mentioned to use that this morning. I use it a lot. And we do transcend and expand our consciousness and open ourselves up to other possibilities when we find that silence, and especially in nature. It's really powerful stuff. And so we've got to just bringing it to the mountaintop here. If we don't cultivate a social norm of silence in our own heart, in our own minds, in our own beings, in our own families, in our own lives, and then bring that out into the world and cultivate that collectively as communities, I don't know how we're going to move forward as a society that embraces and says, oh, we want to love everybody. Well, then shut up and sit down and figure out how to love yourself. And then don't come tell me how I'm wrong about I'm doing it. Show me that you are love. It goes back to those quotes. I don't need you to tell me all of the ways that you think I'm wrong and the things that I need to do differently. Show me. Don't put the quotes up all around you when you go out in public. Be what you already are. Bring that silent, still knowingness and awareness. Cultivate that as a norm and bring that into the room. And when you already are that, you won't have to tell anybody what you believe or what you don't believe. And you won't have to tell anybody else what they believe or don't believe is right or wrong. Because we'll all connect on that silent, still, really still space of sacredness inside of each and every one of us. That's the power of social norms. There's your secret, people. It's the power, and it's why mindfulness is really woven through this whole work. It's a social norm I want to cultivate. I want to bring it out into the mainstream. I do believe mindfulness can be mainstream. I do believe silence is strong. It's sexy. It's badass. It's so many cool things. We just got to cultivate the belief and the norms that it is. And if you're not there yet, that's cool. I'm going to keep showing up. I'm going to keep talking. I'm going to keep bringing all my expression out into the world. Maybe I'm the only person that hears it. Maybe Robin and I joked about this on the last episode. I'm like, so what do you think? Maybe the world ends and somebody finds the vault of all of Yedda's podcast episodes and she saves civilization. That's pretty cool concept, right? And I'm like, maybe for an episode of Twilight Zone. In the meantime, what if you showed up and you shut up and you saved the world with your own silence? That's the power that you hold. It's the power that we all hold. So here's to building that really cool social norm of silence. You know how to do it. You've heard some really cool stuff today. You've got some great content. I'm going to be coming back and joining you again. You've still got just me. We're going to be really kind of moving forward into some different concepts, going and further into belief systems. And so when we were opening up the show, we were talking about the 3 myths of behavior change, and I was telling Robin, I forgot my glasses today. So if you're seeing me on video, I got my prescription sunglasses so I can see what's coming up. Oh, cool. So the next episode is the 4 ways we avoid suffering. Oh, exciting stuff. So I'll be back soon. We're going to talk about the 4 ways we avoid suffering. You'll know some more stuff about what you can do, how to get out of that and cannot avoid the suffering, and learn how to just sit down and have a cup of tea and be with it. But until then, help contribute to the world's new social norm of silence and find a space somewhere today to shut up and sit and just listen to the silence and be the silence that the world needs. I'll see you guys soon. Take care.
May you know goodness. May you know peace. May you know contentment. May you be